Raspberry Pi OS Bullseye is here, and I'll quickly tell you everything you need to know. Bullseye catches Raspberry Pi OS up to Debian 11, the next release of the great Linux distribution that Raspberry Pi OS is based on. And what's Debian 11's codename? Bullseye. But not like archery. Think more Woody and Jesse's horse from the Roundup gang in the Toy Story movies. And the previous release, based on Debian 10, was nicknamed Buster after Andy's dog in the movies. Anyways, enough about names. What's new? Well, not too much. It looks pretty much the same as you're used to, though the default background image is now a nice sunset over a lake. But otherwise, the stability is a good thing. Most of the improvements are under the hood. And there are a couple hidden features. First of all, I mentioned a few weeks ago that newer Raspberry Pi 4s started having the same newer C0 revision of the BCM2711 chip that's the heart of the Pi 4, Pi 400, and Compute Module 4. And if you're lucky enough to have a Pi 400, CM4, or newer Pi 4, you're getting a free speed boost. That's right, if you load up Bullseye on a Pi 4 with a C0 revision chip, you're going to get 1.8 GHz by default instead of the old 1.5 GHz standard. And technically you could have always overclocked, but those with newer hardware are able to run at the higher speeds, and provided you have good cooling on your Pi, it's nice and stable. If you have an older Pi with a B0 chip in it, it'll stay at 1.5 GHz by default, since those chips may or may not handle the higher clock speed as gracefully. To be able to tell if you have a newer Pi 4 model, you can look closely at the silver Broadcom chip on top. If the last three characters on the long number are B0T, you have an old Pi and it'll stay at 1.5 GHz by default. If you have a newer model or a Pi 400 or CM4, you'll see a C0T and it should start running at 1.8 GHz by default. The Pi 400 actually did that from the start since it has pretty good thermal management in the form of a massive heatsink under the keyboard. Once you flash Bullseye to your Pi, you'll see a new arm boost parameter in config.txt. That gives your Pi a nice shot in the arm. Get it? Anyway, so free upgrades are great, but for me the news is soured slightly by the fact that there's no 64-bit release yet. Because Pi OS requires a significant effort to get out the door right now, the engineers over at Raspberry Pi apparently focused on the more mainstream 32-bit version. The best thing about a newer OS release is it uses a later Linux kernel by default, and newer Linux kernels have more support for Raspberry Pi hardware built right in. There are fewer patches the Raspberry Pi team has to maintain in their fork of Debian just to make Linux run well on the Pi. So in the end, my recommendation is probably wait a few weeks to upgrade your running Pis, and when you do choose to upgrade, make sure you have a backup. If you're trying something new though, go ahead and try out the new release. I'm sure the Pi engineers would love any feedback to help make this the best OS for the Pi. Make sure you subscribe to see the boards I'll be testing this month, like the Radsa Taco 5-bay NAS, the Qt Pi tablet, the Turing Pi 2, and a Pi motherboard so wild you'll have to see it to believe it. Until next time, I'm Jeff Geerling.